And we can't think of anyone better than the Chief Technology Officer from Starling Bank, who, for my money and possibly for many of you, has done fine banking and, business and personal banking. And I would like you all to welcome, please, Jason Maude from Starling.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for selecting my special skill as pedagogy. It is my family's profession is teaching, in fact, so it was well picked. Level 1, the quest begins, and I am here as your quest giver, your Gandalf, Merlin, Obi-Wan Kenobi, pick your poison. And I'm here to talk about Starling Bank's experience in retail banking and how we have gone into retail banking and really changed things, shaken it up, transformed retail banking. I know we've transformed retail banking because I see adverts from high street banks copying us, proposing features that we created, invented, released into the world, and now they copy us, and imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So, how did we do it? How did we change the game of retail banking? And what lessons can be drawn out from that into the wider financial sphere? So, a quote from Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg famously said, "Move fast and break things. If you are not breaking things, you are not moving fast enough." Now, what he meant by that was not, let's release buggy code. Let's release, just release whatever out into the atmosphere. What he meant by that was you have to actually get stuff in front of customers, right, to know whether it's working or not. You can create any magical code you like completely in isolation, but unless it's actually out there doing something for someone, then you don't even know if it's working or not. So sometimes you need to prefer getting stuff in front of people to hiding things behind the scenes, right? But we in the finance industry said, that's all very well and good for those big social media companies, who do these sort of fly-by-night things where they release tweets. No one cares if you miss a tweet or a post, right? No one cares if that goes missing. But if a payment goes missing, that's a problem. Everyone complains about that. So we'll abandon this ridiculous move fast and break things philosophy. That's for them over there. We release things slowly, sedately. We are conservative with a small c because everyone trusts us with their money, and they won't trust us if we don't get anything, if we start doing things wrong, right? So, what happened is the finance industry adopted a process of changing very slowly, very conservatively, and nothing ever went wrong in finance, in IT. So just to make sure you were awake. Of course things went wrong in finance and IT. There were, disasters that happened, the big RBS problem, the big TSB problem, right? These big, huge disasters that happened in IT. We at Starling like studying these disasters. We are, fascinated by these disasters and how things went wrong because we want to avoid that, right? We want to avoid those things. Move fast and break things, or move slow and break things. If you're moving, you break things. Well, what if we don't move? What if we just keep everything the same? Well, you can't perform a quest without movement. Movement is one of the defining features of a quest. The world is going to change. The world is changing not just in consumer expectations and how customers work, but also in what the regulator expects. Consumer duty has come in. Oh, damn, that's a change. And that probably requires a change to systems in some way. Right? Might do. Or another regulatory requirement might require a change to systems. So things are going to break. If you change, we know that, all change runs the risk of breaking. So you're going to have to change. So we're going to have to ask ourselves, how do we change? How do we embrace change, but at the same time retain this good element of being conservative with a small c with people's money in order that they trust us? And there are 3 lessons that I want to bring out. Good quests often have lessons to learn, directions to go in, and there are 3 principles which I want to bring out. And the first one I want to bring out is this. Lesson 1, don't make change and stability enemies of each other. Many people, when they talk about change and stability, talk about these 2 things being in balance with one another, right? There's a balance, they're on a seesaw. Right? And a lot of the discussion is about finding the correct balance between change and innovation and development on the one hand, and stability, safety, security on the other. The problem is, if these things are in balance, what that means is that if you try and move one up, the other one has to go down. They're on a seesaw. What's even worse is that once your firm gets to a particular size, you will find that you specialize into different departments, and you will find that different departments are on different sides of the seesaw. Sales and product development, they are trying to push up the innovation, whereas the risk, compliance, legal departments, they are trying to push up on the safety and security. And so you've got different sides of your organization at war with each other, trying to push up their side of the seesaw, which necessarily pushes down the other side. And there's this fight. The party is divided, to use the questing metaphor, and the divided party cannot succeed. So how do we change this? At Starling, we've changed the model of this to make sure that the innovation, change, development, and the safety, security, reliability support each other. That they support each other, that they are mutually supporting, that they are not in balance. We've changed it so that if you start developing faster and more quickly, you can improve reliability and security. And if you improve reliability and security, then that ups your innovation and development, or rather you trust yourself enough to do more innovation and development because things are reliable. So that's the first principle. Make sure these things are in a virtuous circle, not on a seesaw balance. Okay, second question then. This comes on to the second question. You might all be thinking in the audience, that's all very well, but how do you do that? How do you actually achieve that? The second principle is you have to concentrate on resilience. Resilience doesn't ask the question, how do we stop things going wrong? Resilience assumes things that are going to go wrong. Things are going to fail. You are going to fall down. You are going to fail in some side quests, encounter difficulties that you can't overcome at first. And then it asks the question, how do you recover quickly from that? Right? How do you make sure that the problems that you are experiencing causes the least amount of disruption to what you are doing? Right? So that's the resilience question. What we've done is we've spent a lot of time making sure that our systems are resilient, our software systems. We've built out a lot of our own software. We have a very good engineering department that we have built up that tries to get this software into a place where it can recover itself when there are problems. So when an issue occurs, when one of the pieces of software goes down, either internally or externally, as it often does, the system anticipates that this will happen, and when things are back up and running again, it catches up. It saves its state and catches back up with where it should be, trying to reach consistency. It assumes that their problems are going to happen. It does not trust that everything will be correct. Right? So we've got this situation where dealing with the software systems, the software system catches up with where it should be. We also have monitoring for some of the slightly bigger problems. When something goes wrong that the system can't fix, it raises the alarm, and people quickly notice this and swarm to it. Now, what this means is that because we are trusting of the system that it will recover when something goes wrong, we have approximately 8 different engineering groups, each doing 1 or 2 releases a day into production. So that's about a dozen releases a day into production of code, a dozen changes a day. All of these little, small changes, right? Now, we know that the system can recover from outages, so we're happy releasing a lot. And we know that if something goes wrong, we'll quickly notice the problem and we'll roll back whatever went wrong, because there is good monitoring in place to ensure that we are resilient. And this means we can release dozens of times a day in the middle of the day. And if you speak to any engineers, you will know that it is much safer to release code in the middle of the day when everything is, when there are loads of engineers around and everyone's awake, rather than at 2 in the morning. Who here is been a software engineer who has tried to do a release at 2 in the morning or out of hours? Just me then? It's not good. It's not a good idea. You don't want people releasing code at 2 in the morning because they're half asleep. It's easier for them to make a mistake. So release during the middle of the day, but in order to do that, your systems have to be resilient, and you have to have that minimal impact on the customer. So that's principle 2. Be resilient. Build your systems, your processes to be as resilient as you possibly can. And principle 3. You might be asking yourself, but okay, maybe the system can be resilient. Computers can, catch up to things quite quickly and deal with things quite quickly. But with human processes, it takes a little bit longer, right? Humans take a little bit longer to think through things. If a system changes and we need training or what have you, it takes longer to deal with that. The answer is yes, it does. So principle 3 is you have to disconnect the business change and the system change from each other to a certain degree. Oftentimes in the past this wasn't possible, but now, as long as you have created your system well, your system in this resilient way, your system using these latest architectural techniques, you will be able to create a situation where the engineers can release as often as they like to try and get a new feature into a position where it can be turned on, but then the actual final flick of the switch to actually turn it on can be controlled by the business, and when the business at large feels it is ready, it can then switch it on. So you can move the software at one speed and the human beings at another, and these two increasingly need to run at different speeds from each other because software needs to be developed fast. Software stability I often compare to riding a bicycle. Right? The stability of riding a bicycle is when the bicycle is moving, not when the bicycle is stopped. If the bicycle is stopped, it's not stable, it falls over. Software is the same. You have to keep moving the software forward in order to keep its stability, because it keeps developing and developing and developing, right? And because new problems get found, new issues get found with the software, and so on and so on. Human beings don't move like that. They have different stability, so you have to disconnect the two to some extent. So those are the 3 principles that I want to introduce to you on this quest to make sure that you try and follow. So understand that you're going to move fast and break things, or move slow and break things, but understand that you're going to have to move. Movement is, it's not an option to stay still anymore, unfortunately. So first up, stability and innovation have to go hand in hand. That's principle 1. They have to support each other, not oppose each other. Principle 2, you have to make sure that you are resilient in order to make this true. You have to make sure you have resilient systems that anticipate failure will happen and doesn't ask the question so much how do we stop failure as how do we recover when failure inevitably occurs. And then principle 3, understand that your business processes and your software are going to move at different speeds and enable those two to be decoupled so that decisions can be made on them to a degree separately. Thank you very much.
Well, that was fantastic stuff. Thank you, and a great introduction to our quest, and thank you for playing along with the quest. I think the thing, lots of people who are running advice businesses and so on in the room are going to be thinking, well, we're not coding, but they are having to deal with the results of the businesses who are. Yeah. And so if you're sort of at the receiving end of this kind of stuff, how do you live with that when either you're firmly not in control and stuff's getting planked in at 2 a.m. on a bank holiday or whatever? And I thought that was great. I've never heard anybody say before, you shouldn't ship code when people are sleepy. Yeah. I think that makes quite a lot of sense, actually. I've sat there at midnight and 2 in the morning when stuff's getting pushed and everybody's, well, quite a lot of them were drunk, actually. Yeah. And that might tell you some things about places I used to work. But
the worst disasters, by the way, don't happen when people release code. It happens when people go, oh, there's a slight problem, and try and roll it back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what caused the massive, the RBS problem in 2012. Yeah. That wasn't caused by the release of code, you know, where there was a minor problem. It was caused when they tried to roll it back and got the rollback wrong. And that's what caused a complete catastrophe.
So if you're, I'm thinking about, I mean, you must talk to Starling users all the time who aren't in control of this. How do businesses that depend on these kind of services make themselves resilient to try and match off to the stuff that you're talking about?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we have to do this to a certain extent too, right? Because we don't, although we code a lot of stuff in-house, we don't do everything, and we have to be resilient, you know, to failures in larger industries. So it's about, firstly, it's about good vendor management, and it's about asking the right questions of your vendors. And a lot of the questions you have to ask of your vendors are, all right, how are you resilient, right? What are you going to do if, you know, what do you do when your system falls over? How quickly can you recover? What is your, you know, plan for recovery? It's also about asking yourself, what happens when this vendor has an outage? What do we do? Right? You know, what do we do if we can't access this vendor? And trying to work out that. Again, it's about assuming failure will happen and then assuming that, you know, okay, given that failure will happen, how do we adapt to it?
And I think lots of people, as we get through the day, will hear this more and more people saying, well, I just want it to do the basics. I just want things to work. But it's quite hard, I think, to articulate in detail what that means. So from Starling customers' point of view, there must be certain services that have to be cast iron, and I guess everything's interconnected in these huge systems, whether it's the wealth systems that we use or the banking systems that you use. Sure. So how do you get that balance right?
So one thing I just want to pick up on there is the something that can sometimes not be obvious to non-software engineers is what you just said there of, I just want it to work, right? I just want it to work. That's what software engineers, I just want this, right? You know, it's like just, like every time I hear the word just, I get a tick. You know? I just want that. Because if you go along to a physical engineer, a structural engineer, halfway through a building project and say, oh, can you just stick another 2 stories on the building, right? They'll look at you and go, get out, you know, what are you talking about? No, we can't just stick another 2 stories on the building. But engineers get told all the time, software engineers get told all the time, right, okay, can you add this? Oh, we'll also need this feature, you know, and we're like, well, we've designed it for 1,000 users a day, but we need 10,000. You know, and this increasing, the malleability of software gets used as a as a great boon to people who are asking for engineers to make something just work and so on. Then people get confused about why software engineers can't give reasonable deadlines or tell you when things are going to be completed by. It's because we're sitting there going, well, they're going to ask for another 2 stories on the building, aren't they? And we don't know how to put those on. Right, so that's a lot of the. When you ask a software engineer for a deadline, one of 2 things will happen. Right, the first thing that will happen is that they will lie. Right, that's possibility number 1, and pad their estimate massively. Right, to be at the 99th percentile of what could happen. And the second possibility is they won't be experienced enough to know that they should lie. One of those 2 things is going to happen. I'm not sure if that answered your question. But
I don't know, but it's very good. I enjoyed it very much.
Either way, like at Starling, we don't give out like estimates of when things are going to be completed because we've just gone, we don't know. It's like software is so malleable that it's very different from physical engineering, so we don't know when things are going to be completed. So it's difficult to say when things will just work, right? And the other thing is things keep changing as well, right? It's almost like a fourth road bridge problem, right? It's you're continually, you have to, as soon as you think you've finished, there's another thing that you have to do to improve it.
Although I just want to make this point, given where we are. They have the last coat they put in the fourth road bridge is super new and special paint, which has taken away that problem.
Ah, okay.
They won't have to start again as soon as they're done. I just thought I'd raise it. It's important.
That metaphor is now defunct.
You're done.
Yeah,
that's that. Yeah. That's that. Listen, we're actually over time, and I could keep chatting to you all day, and I know you've got to head away after this, which is a shame. But one of the things that everybody deals with in here, and remembering in our day today, we're trying to think about the good, and collectively in this room, there are businesses large and small who have done, I think, incredible things for clients, but that creates its own legacy. Not just a legacy of good things, but legacy code and legacy investments and all that kind of stuff. And I can see very clearly how a startup, a neobank, can cut different kinds of code and work in different kinds of ways, but you create legacy every time you do that. And how does Starling deal with the prospective old code, old stuff, version 1.0 that you don't love anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. So legacy code. So I often get challenged with this, which is like, well, Starling has gone this far. Obviously, you're going to slow down once you start developing legacy code, and we haven't, right? Now, if people say, well, it's inevitable, I'll turn around and say, well, what about Amazon? Amazon's been going for 20 years, which is roughly half of the time that software has been a commercial concern for humanity. Why haven't they developed legacy code and slowed down to a halt? And the answer is because of the attitude with which they approach software. It's the way they approach software as this constantly changing, constantly evolving thing. A garden, if you will, where they are constantly maintaining, de-weeding, regrowing, everything's changing. Not like a building. The legacy systems come in where you treat software like a building, where you build it up and then you go, it's done, finished, stopped, it just works, business as usual. Because then what happens is it very rapidly decays. And it doesn't last as long as anywhere near as a building, right? It's more like a bed of flowers which grows wilts, and so on. You need to de-weed and change much more regularly. So it's about that attitude. That's how you stop getting legacy code. It's about the attitude of constantly maintaining, constantly releasing, constantly moving along on the bicycle, to completely mix my metaphors.
Fantastic. Listen, we're going to have to stop it there. But I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was a great start to our day. Please say thank you to Jason. Thank you very much.